Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Season 7 video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, Butterfly Effect, which follows off from the big Shoji episode last week where we got a lot of backstory and saw him go toe-to-toe with the steroid Spinner. So it's pretty exciting to get some follow-up to that, even if it's not quite at the same level as some of the other fights, you know? I just think the character building they did last episode got you really invested in their story and their clash. More than just being a good versus evil, hero versus villain fight, this one really showed insight into how normal people can become radicalized and that the conflict isn't necessarily 100% black and white. But before we go any further, I would like to say that whilst I have read the manga, I'm pretty sure I dropped out before I got to this point, so we're flying blind now. So with all that being said, let's jump into the episode. Okay, so we start off with a bit of recap, probably because a lot of the actions in the previous episodes are pretty relevant and important to what's going on here. So yeah, we see Spinner rally the troops and invade the hospital, and whilst he runs off into the corridors chasing after Kurogiri, his followers that swarmed in with him, they notice all the doctors are standing around holding hands, protecting the patients, which in turn makes a pig dude? I think he's a pig. Remember what Shoji said about what the heroes did when they attacked the hospital that was housing Shigaraki. Before anything else, before fighting any villains, they ensured that the staff and the patients were safe, while Spinner's just running off to enact violence straight away. So it does feel like this is a wake-up call for the group. A bit of a "are we the baddies" sort of moment, as we see when he drops his baseball bat. We then go into the intro, and when we return, we're back with Spinner, who's charging down the hallway thinking to himself that he's finally made it. He's gonna be somebody, that he has this whole army of people behind him validating him and his choices, only to discover that nobody's followed him except for present Mike, who dramatically walks up to him from the darkness. So, did he sprint inside and then just slow down for dramatic effect? Was he waiting in a side room? I mean, wasn't he outside in the battle earlier? Also, damn, I guess he's a hard counter for Spinner because despite all of these new quirks, he gets one-shotted by Mike, destroys his scales. It seems to shrink his body back down to what it was and probably rattled his brain, and also destroys the recording device he was going to use to wake up Kurogiri and get him to help the League fight. So, absolutely rinsed here. Why was Mike not whooping ass like this earlier? He needs to lift his game. How many cops and minor heroes got mauled because he's just sitting on a power set like this? Especially since it seems pretty crucial that you don't want to have Kurogiri get set free. Spinner should never have made it this far. And then we cut back a couple of minutes to show that apparently Mike is a world-class sprinter, as he'd followed Spinner after he'd already charged in. But now, we get a look at what Shoji was doing at this time. Whilst Kota holds down the ringleader, Shoji's legit facing down the entire horde of them all by himself. My god, what a Chad. He's gone from a character that I thought looked kinda cool, but I didn't really care all that much about, to one of the breakout characters of this arc. Seriously, the dude's just so cool to me at this point. Him facing them down, such a cool visual. And then some random tries to brain him with an axe. Yikes. Only for the pigman to grab the blade with his hand. Double yikes. And a big ouchie. And so the pigman reveals that everybody who went into the hospital, they've backed down. They've stood down. And whilst the ringleader rants and raves, Piggy gives a really deep speech about the process of being radicalized, that it played on his hurt, upon his trauma, and that when he heard that by doing nothing to protect heteromorphs, that the rest of society must therefore be evil too, it struck a chord with him and made him agree that they deserve justice, and that's why he joined the mob in the first place. But that was in theory. But in practice, he can't follow through with their dogma because he doesn't actually feel like everybody's at fault. Just because he faced discrimination doesn't give him that blanket opportunity to hurt everybody just for existing. And I really liked this because it shows the hypocrisy of a lot of terrorism. A person feels hurt or discriminated against or threatened, and so they decide to do the same to others. I also like the hypocrisy of the ringleader. In his monologue, when he feels like he's losing the crowd to Shoji, he thinks about how he just managed to get them to turn into a big meat shield, showing that in the end, he doesn't care about them. He simply wants to use them for his own revenge. If they die, they die. There are others. It very much feels like a realistic look at terrorism leaders. Yeah, bro, so you suicide bomb, and then I'll stay here, and I'll plan more. Good luck. Typical, really. And so the momentum switches, and the mob starts to calm down, but no time to rest because there's still drama near Kurogiri's ward. And we return to that scene with two parallel internal monologues from both Spinner and Mike, where they ponder having to go above and beyond in order to achieve their goals, and most importantly, help their friends. Spinner thinks about how much he trusts in Shigaraki and how Shigaraki is his friend, the bond they share, and how he inspired Spinner as they continued in their mission. And so, he pushes himself beyond his limits to try to wake Kurogiri up, putting one of the charred hands on his face to remind him of Shigaraki. And I mean, we already knew this about Spinner by this point, that he's a devoted friend and is extremely dedicated to the cause, and the reasons as to why. But I also found it super interesting that Mike had a very similar thought process. That his motivation here is that Aizawa's gone through enough. He's lost so much. He's so injured. And that if Kurogiri wakes up and causes havoc, it's gonna damage Aizawa's happy memories of him, cause them to be tainted. And so, at this point you can see that Mike's weighing in his head. Should I kill him? Or is my friend still in there? Do I know for certain? Can I risk it? All of these things seem to be swirling in his head, and I found that really compelling. I love how this somewhat comic relief character can suddenly have so much depth when it matters the most. And not gonna lie, this part I found it both shocking and very gripping. I was on the edge of my seat. But yeah, Mike hesitates, and that gives Spinner the chance to wake Kurogiri up. And even though Spinner ends up getting blasted, it's too late to stop the portals. And so you have this cool moment where President Mike sees Shirakumo's face through the mist before it all cuts away. And so we're over to the US, where a news weather lady calls out the government for being cowards and trying to ingratiate themselves with All For One instead of trying to help fight him. Yeah, their president is surely going to have to resign in disgrace after all this, right? He made himself look like a fool in the biggest crisis of their time. Whoops. So I guess this scene's there to show that there's international support from people, but whether it actually has any proper storyline consequences for the battles, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it's just story flavor, but they do keep going back to America. And then we check in with some of the battles. Over in Kamino, it's not looking good for Shoto and his team. They're all past their limits. They're all scuffed. To the point that the heat's getting to them and even getting to Shoto. And yet Darby's over there just chilling in the flames, still moving, still fighting, and has them all shaken. And it's clear that he's just existing purely on spite and hatred now. Hence why he refuses to go down. And I reckon if they fought again at this stage, Darby would straight up kill them all. But he knows his body can't last. He can't fight Shoto and yet still survive to fight Endeavor. So lucky that Kurogiri gives him a portal, eh? Man. I'm really hyped for Endeavor versus Darby, to be honest. This battle's going to be crazy, I think, and really emotional. It has to be. It's been built up for so long. Moving on, we cut over to the coffin in the sky, where Monoma has a pretty funny line where he rants about how when it's all said and done, he's going to force the history books to state that they couldn't have won without him, which is honestly fair. He may not be getting bludgeoned in the battles, but he has to keep his eyes open, no blinking, always holding the quirk. And they're out in the rain, which can't be pleasant, and Manuel's shooting water into his eyes to keep them moisturized so he doesn't need to blink, which I guess it works in theory, but shooting water into your eyes like that actually does hurt. So this must suck. Monoma, he's gone from cocky dweeb to a massive Chad, and you love to see it. All For One then gets a big philosophical monologue as the portals keep coming in, with Mike getting dumped in behind Aizawa and Monoma, so I'm thinking the blink is going to end very soon, which is going to let Shigaraki bust out of confinement, and for the battle to enter the next phase. As over in the Gunga Villa, we have Darby arrive to fight Endeavor, and Toga as Twice arrive to fight Hawks to get revenge for the killing of Twice. Man, crazy how in just half an episode, they can reheat all these banger fights and take them to the next level. This season's getting so good! And then it's over to the island to see the lead up to Toga arriving as Twice, using the Sad Man Parade. So yeah, this battle's a far lower power level type of battle, it seems. Lots of low tier villains, and then Toga, who alone is a lesser threat, but who with a group is mega strong as she can hide and ambush, which she does a lot in this sequence. Almost kills Froppy at one point, but even then, the heroes have a perfect team with them. Some who can even track her when they can't see her. Honestly, I kind of thought those two extra heroes were going to be dead meat and clear fodder. I figured they'd die to somewhat up the stakes, but no. I have noticed there's lots of bloodied heroes, but no real deaths just yet. Like, yeah, Bakugo, but it's clear he's coming back to life, you know? The double ambush at the mountain villa and the hospital, that was so crazy back then because there was a bunch of heroes and villains, including characters we knew for ages like Twice at Midnight, getting killed off. But so far, in this, the final battle, nothing like that seems to be happening. I mean, stakes are high, but I do think they got to dispose of somebody, right? Not just the main villains. Anyway, moving on, we see the orcas doing their thing. And are they all orcas? Like, one big family? Do they cosplay? Is he the real deal? I've always wondered from the moment I first saw his sidekicks, because there are heaps of them. Surely it can't be that common a quirk to have, right? And then we come to Toga, and she's realizing she's cooked. Her team's losing badly as it's mostly noobs, and she's running out of ways to avoid getting caught by the heroes, and so she has to rely on Spinner and use Jin's blood. This allows her to use Sad Man's Parade, and after faking out Froppy, she actually gets to use it, and then the portal comes in just in time. So she doesn't even need to kill anybody on the island, even Froppy, who's laying down KO'd at her feet. She just jumps into the portal and gets away, although I think that Uraraka is going to follow her somehow. Surely. It feels like they built her up as her villain for ages. It would be very weird if Hawks fights and defeats her, and Uraraka's just not involved. And yeah, this visual of her huge Twice army, it's nuts. I love to see it. And surely some of these low-tier heroes are dead meat. They have All For One, unhinged Darby, and now unhinged Toga Twice doing the Sad Man's Death Parade. GG to those guys. Whew, no chance. Oh, and what do you know, the preview shows that they are gonna whoop some serious ass. We see people getting hit by fire, see them getting tackled by Twice, and we also see that Froppy and Aravity are gonna come through the portals to fight as well. Exciting times. Curious to see how it all plays out. Just so epic right now. And so with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? You like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.